Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you so much for joining us on today's webinar. I'm Paul, and I work in the marketing team here at eviivo, and joining me today is James, helping me co-host the webinar. And these webinars are all about helping you through these turbulent times we unfortunately all continue to currently face, but they're a place for us to come together as an industry to share ideas and learn from each other and get through this together so that we come out of it in a strong position, ready to have a great 2021 in a more pre-COVID normality. We are, of course, moved into a third lockdown at the moment. However, this does give us a quiet time and a unique opportunity really to take a look at our businesses and make tweaks and changes that we think will help us going forward to have a great 2021 season. So today, with the help of the industry guests that we have on the call and the property guests, we'll be taking a look at what we've learned through the previous lockdowns with regards to review management and guest management, and see what we can now apply to our businesses to, again, have a successful 2021. So we have some great guests on the call to help us look at that and share their expertise. We've got David Weston giving us an update initially with regards to potential opening dates and thoughts on perhaps potential opportunities around the imminent quarantine rule changes for people coming into the UK. Karen Foster, Managing Director of GuestTalk, will be joining us to share the learnings about remote guest management and how it's been so important through 2020 and how it's now something that guests are actually proactively looking for when booking in 2021. Mark Scott, owner of LM House, will be joining us to talk about the changes in these areas that he made to his business last year and the benefits that he had through the summer and how he's getting ready for this year going forward. And then Francisco Padillo, Key Account Manager at TrustYou, he'll be highlighting the ever importance of your online reputation, how it's more important probably now more than ever, how to best manage those online reviews that you get and how to use them to help get you further bookings going forward. Now, as always, we'd really like you to share your ideas and your thoughts and your questions in the chat. You can do that using the functionality in the Zoom window, just at the bottom of the Zoom window there to the right to the center. James will be monitoring that through the course of the webinar and throw in any pertinent questions or comments as we go through. Good stuff. So another packed schedule. So without further ado, we'll hand over to David for an update.
Thanks very much, Paul. And it's great to see you all. And thank you to eviivo for inviting me to be part of this again. I think last week we had a record of about 180 people on this. So it's a great way of communicating with you all. And just for those who haven't been on one of these before or don't know us, we're the B&B Association, which is the trade association for owners of B&Bs, guest houses and small independent hotels. We're here to fight your corner and inform and represent you. And just a quick update of various things that have happened this week. We have particularly been dealing with Scotland this week because there's been a couple of things happening for B&Bs and guest houses in Scotland. As those of you there will know already, there's plans for a short-term lets licensing scheme to deal with the problems of so-called short-term lets, particularly in Edinburgh. But the scheme that the Scottish Government have come up with would mean that even all small B&Bs, people classed as a house, use class 9 in Scotland, would be caught by this scheme and have to have a license. There's a lot more detail about that on our website and members know about it, but we've been making representations to the government about that. I spent an hour and a half on the phone last week to Fergus Ewing, the Cabinet Secretary for Tourism in Scotland, about that. And so we are pressing to have them change course on that. So that's one issue. Another one is funding. Grants in Scotland, they have a thing called the Strategic Framework Business Fund, and they announced a top up for hospitality businesses earlier this month, but then suddenly announced that that didn't cover B&Bs, and that's caused a lot of bafflement and some anger amongst B&Bs up in Scotland. we're taking this up with them, and there's some good news about to come out into the public domain, that there is, following our representations and from others, there is going to be funding announced for B&Bs, including, I'm reading some draft wording from the Scottish Government here. B&Bs paying council tax will get equivalent support comprising £2,000 every 4 weeks. That's due to foreclosure. That will shortly be announced. It will probably be through local authorities, but the Scottish Government say don't contact your local authority yet, because they'll be inundated, and they're working on getting this up and running. There'll be a link coming out to the Fine Business Support page on the Scottish Government, and that will tell you how to apply. And of course, we'll keep members informed how to apply and all of that. That's Scotland. Rest of the UK, or mainly England, the ARG fund is the one which B&Bs have been applying for to the local authority for support, and we're hearing that people have been getting funding from that. Amounts vary because it's discretionary, it's from each local authority, so it does vary. And of course, some local authorities are quicker than others. So some are already paying out, some have just launched their applications. They're all at different stages. I'm afraid there's not a lot we can do about that, but keep an eye, if you haven't done already, of your local authority website for the additional restrictions grant, ARG, and look out for that. Then opening dates, of course, that's what everybody wants to know in our sector. When are we going to be allowed to open again, trade again, get money coming in again? And the short answer is nobody knows yet, or no decisions have been made, and it's a race between the vaccine rollout and the new variant COVID, which is very virulent. But the government thinking from the ministers and officials we talked to is April/May that the hospitality sector should be allowed to open. And it may be earlier than that, but that's the sort of thinking they have. April/May, it's a bit vague, but the hope is to get everyone up and running from Easter. But of course, a decision won't be made yet. My feeling is that the government will want to make some kind of big announcement on the 23rd of March, which is the anniversary of the first lockdown. And I'm sure they would like to be able to be saying to open things up, on that date and be symbolic, but who knows? The good thing is that B&Bs, guest houses will be amongst the first or earlier parts of the sector to be allowed to open, because people can come obviously safely and stay at B&Bs and don't mix with other guests. And of course they are already, when they're on business or key workers, there are already small numbers staying with you for that reason. So we should be allowed to open early. Of course, the unlucky parts of the sector that will be kept closed for the longest will be mass gatherings, the Glastonbury Festival type things, live events, theatre, all of those kind of sectors, and conferences and events may be kept maybe a few more months before they're allowed to fully reopen. But it should be B&Bs and hotels from spring. And we're obviously pushing for as early as possible notice of when people are going to be allowed to be open, because we've strongly told the government that our sector must have notice, because we can't just switch on our businesses from one day to the next. We've obviously got to be marketing to fill those rooms. And obviously a lot of you are already filling rooms from whichever date you've decided, and you want to know that it's firm. As we did in the weeks going up to, if you remember that far back, the weeks going up to 4th of July eventually was, and we weren't given a lot of notice then of the 4th of July date that we're allowed to open in England. It was 15th in Scotland. So we're just pressing for as much notice as possible for opening. But the good point, it's bad, but it's good in some ways, is that international travel is going to be more difficult for probably many months, with things like quarantining rules, the cost of testing for travellers and those kind of issues, and possible limits to people who are vaccinated, maybe. So for all those reasons, it may be more difficult for quite some time to fly abroad. So when things open up, I think things are in place for there to be a good main season for domestic tourism. Let's hope so, for all of our B&Bs and guest houses, because we certainly need it. We certainly need to be getting that money in again to make up for all those many months of closure. And conscious of time, so just one more thing I'll add, which is the hotel quarantine issue, which has been in the news a lot, that the government is looking at bringing in so-called hotel quarantine, where people flying in from certain destinations to the UK will be forced to stay in designated accommodation in hotels, other accommodation. They'll be bussed from the airport to accommodation to stay there for 10, 14 days, as is happening in other countries already, and our government is looking at that. Nothing's been decided, but we are in touch with government, so if and when that comes in, we will be pressing for opportunities for independent properties, B&Bs, if the government is going to be booking or coordinating bookings for many tens of thousands of hotel bedrooms, which they'd have to do not far from airports and ports of entry, then we want to have B&Bs and guest houses considered as part of that programme rather than just the hotel chains. So we'll be in touch with government on that, and any opportunities that come along we'll feed out to all of you. So we're on that for you. So that's all I wanted to quickly mention. Happy to take any questions later if there's any time. So that's all from me. Thank you.
Thanks, David. No, that's great. And yeah, the potential for the sort of housing of people coming into the UK, re the quarantine, is an interesting one. I think there should be an announcement a bit later today, and we're keeping well abreast of that as well here to kind of see if independent accommodation can be included or is going to be included in that. Very much hopeful it will be, because it might be an opportunity for some. We're actually running a pricing and promo masterclass tomorrow for eviivo customers that are on this call. There'll be an email coming out a bit later that might help with that should the opportunity arise. But yeah, before we get on to the first guest, we do have a bit of time maybe for a couple of questions, James, if any have come through. I've seen a few trickling through into the...
So to David, in terms of well, three things really. So query on the sort of Scottish grants. So whether that's extended to self-catering properties, would be good if you could give some clarity on that. Just a couple of comments actually on local councils taking into consideration the distribution choices of properties when looking at grants. So there was kind of rumours there about if a property was choosing to list with Airbnb or VRBO, that they would exempt from grants. So is that something that you've heard, or at least to make you aware of when you're hobnobbing with ministers? And then maybe if we can share some links around, a couple of questions around, what can people, what kind of customers can people accommodate now? So in terms of, key workers and what have you, if there's any reference links that we can include, that would be great.
Yes, thanks for that, James. Yes, on self-catering, yes, there is an additional grant for self-catering. There's a large self-catering grant, and there's also going to be, and I'm just reading wording as I'm saying, self-catering businesses eligible to apply if they have a property with accommodates 7 or more people, for which they pay non-domestic rates. Large self-catering grant will make one-off payments of £2,000. Then there's an exclusive use grant, and there's going to be an additional funding package which they haven't yet announced, which is going to be announced any day now. But there is going to be some additional help for self-catering as well as B&Bs in Scotland. The second question on Airbnb, no, I've not heard that. and as far as I know, that's not a factor, and I don't see why it should be, just because you distribute through a certain business that you wouldn't be eligible for grants. So I'm not aware of that, and I don't think it should be a criteria. So again, we haven't heard that. No.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good stuff. Thank you, David. And then on the links and types of people that are unable to stay at properties at the moment, it is literally key workers and people that have to travel for business. I think I'm right in saying, isn't it, David? That's what's the current...
Yes, it's people who have to travel for business, which is a quite wide one, and it's essential workers and people who can't stay at their home. So we've had people inquiring about people flooded out of their houses in certain places when we had floods. Yes, that is one of the reasons they can book into accommodation if they can't stay in their home temporarily for some reason, or if they're moving house and again they're between houses, that sort of thing. That is allowed, and for caring purposes or education purposes.
Great, thank you, David. That's fantastic. We'll perhaps try and find some links for that as well. Throw up on our coronavirus page, the eviivo coronavirus page, and I'm sure that David, you perhaps pop the association website as well. Great, thank you again for joining us today, David. Really useful as ever. Good stuff. So our next guest today is Karen Foster of GuestTalk. Karen, are you there?
Hello, I'm here.
Hey Karen, how are you? Thank you for joining us today. Maybe we can start off by if you can tell us a little bit about GuestTalk and the types of accommodation businesses that you work with.
Okay, so GuestTalk's a communication platform that integrates with eviivo. So what we do is we pull across all of the guest and booking data and then allow you to automate and do ad hoc communication directly with them. And that's any property. So we do hotels, B&Bs, hostels, Airbnb places, service departments. So any sort of property management, it allows that sort of communication to go through via SMS, email and social media. So that's from that initial first stage of your bookings come in, here's all the key information, which is massively more important nowadays to get that reassurance piece, to when they're there, here's all the your door code, having that ad hoc, can I get some new towels, can I order breakfast, all those sorts of things, to the post day, how did you find us, here's some promotional messaging to get you to return. So it's the right way through the customer journey.
Yeah, and as you sort of alluded to there, through the last year especially, I'm sure you've seen it become massively important for businesses to be able to offer that and do that. And I guess you've had lots of people sign up on the back of that basis. But do you think we're at a point now where sort of guests are really starting to look at that as a prerequisite before maybe they book?
Yeah, I do think so. Some of obviously there's been a lot of lockdowns and a lot of closures, so there's not a massive amount of statistics out there, but some of the recent surveys that have been going around saying that 88% of travellers feel that social distancing measures are really important. And then there's lots of feedback from guests about reassurance and that initial communication about, how are you COVID safe? How are you going to protect me when I go to your property? So that those first messages to the customer, to the guests, are really important. Telling them about all your cleaning processes, how you're going to allow them to socially distance from you while they're at the property, and just providing that reassurance, basically, even just having someone to speak to. So previously, last year I'd book a hotel, send it off, and wouldn't speak to them until I got to the hotel, and that would be fine. But now I think people want that, okay, well, who can I speak to? I'm a little bit uncertain about what's going to happen, and if it's safe, and so it's that communication.
And I guess being able to do that really easily through any means or method that they want to, that's where kind of GuestTalk brings them all together and makes it very easy for them to then link into the owner in a nice, simple way for them too.
Yeah, exactly. So our key messages, especially our automated messages, we broadcast so that they go out via all the channels, so that the guest is definitely going to get it. So whenever I think of like reasons why we do it, I think of my mum, whose inbox is just absolutely rammed. Her email inbox is absolutely rammed with millions of things, and she can never find anything. But her text messages are read all the time. And then there's my sister, who's the opposite way, who never reads her text messages, but she's always on her email. So, or Messenger. So yeah, I can get hold of her on Messenger. So
no excuses for your family if they don't answer something that you sent through to them.
Oh no, we broadcast everywhere. So, it's about having that easy access. And if you've just got a thought, you don't want to have to go through, let me find that email. It's generally a lot easier on, say.
Yeah. Definitely. And I know amongst some owners, there's a bit of a concern that sort of managing things remotely, yes, it's needed, and it's needed, especially at the minute, and it's good that it's there as an option. But is there a fear that businesses lose that sort of one-on-one contact and that sort of service element that makes staying an independent accommodation especially so great? That's one of the key things and reasons why they're booked.
I think it's all about how you do it. So, like I said, we have a mixture of automated messages and ad hoc messages where someone's actually receiving the message and they're responding directly. And it's how you write it. So all of our automated messages are based on templates, and the hotel writes those templates. It's all personalised, so you can put tags in for the guests. So, hi Karen. You're staying with us, and then you put in it puts in the date of the stay and any sort of key room details. So it is personalised to you. So it's not just a blanket. Yeah, this went out to everyone.
Yeah.
And it's about doing things like that, but also having that chat type conversation ad hoc, where I'm just messaging in and getting a real person actually messaging back. Mm-hmm. It widens out the scope as well. So obviously with everything that's happening, we're doing a lot more with a lot of people. So it's about all the messages can come through on whatever device the staff have, so they don't have to be tied to a computer. They can get the messages through on their phone, on a tablet, so they can be doing other bits and pieces and responding. So it widens up that window of communication as well for the hours.
That's great. So, and going forward, obviously, when we can sort of get back to normal and socialise with the guests, etc., and meet people face to face, check them in face to face in the kind of traditional way, the two things will still sit beside each other, I suppose, because the added kind of interaction you have with the guests, the added level of service that you then get by being able to be there remotely as well, kind of bundles up into a really nice way of looking after the guests at the end of the day.
Exactly. Yeah. And I think it's messaging people is the new normal. It's been around for a while. We're getting more and more used to it, especially over this last year. So you don't speak to people really, you're messaging them, and it feels like a conversation. So like I'll go onto a website and I'll be messaging them on their website and having that conversation back and forth. I much prefer it to being on a phone.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I guess different generations or different types of travellers, we sort of put into different boxes, the generation X's or Z's or whatever they're called now, they only really communicate in that way, don't they? So that's perhaps increasingly important to them, as you say. And standards in place like getting good email templates out and pre-arrival templates through your PMS systems is super important, but then it's having that additional level of communication to kind of run through the bookings when guests are in the property as well. I know GuestTalk can help in that way, can't it? Communicate different things, upsells, etc.
Yeah, exactly. So this year people have been using it quite differently. Mark, I won't spoil Mark's who's coming up from Elm House, but so there's people are offering sort of facility services, so you can get messages, so you can ask them, what time do you want your laundry picked up, tell them about key information for the gyms, especially now that movement is a little bit more restricted. So, the gym's free between this time. You can book restaurants, you can book meals, tell them about local facilities. And also it's about that post-stay as well. So, his come back next month and get 10% off and all of that. So there's a lot of communication.
And as well as the guest side of things, of course, there's to use and manage communications remotely with staff, if the property has staff as well. I know it's been quite useful, especially through the last year, for messaging in that sense as well. Yeah,
so like I said earlier, there's staff are doing a lot more than with all the extra cleaning and all of the extra procedures that have to happen. So it's about being able to message staff through the same platform, forward on key messages. So a message comes in about getting new towels, you just send it straight through to housekeeping so that they can pick it up on their way. So it sort of reduces that time, and staff can communicate with other staff through the app as well. We've got that record of communication there.
Okay, yeah, that record would be quite useful. I suppose there's any dispute or someone said something has happened and it hasn't. It's just a good way of tracking things and making things more efficient, really. That's really interesting, and as I say, something that we know that people are starting to look forward now when they book. Thank you for that, Karen. Really informative, really useful information. James, I'm just wondering if we've got some questions coming through on the chat for Karen, because it'd be quite good to answer a couple if a few have come through.
So a lot of questions that were asked, you've actually covered, Karen, but in terms of from a broad acceptance of SMS, because I think a few people have put in the phone that a lot of people kind of like to switch their phones off when they're traveling on the holidays. Is that something that you guys find, or is it just SMS, or is there other kind of platforms, other kind of methods of communication that you can use through the platform?
And just sorry to interrupt, just before we jump into that answer, Karen, James, can you throw up the survey as well for people to do whilst they listen to the response? We've just got a quick survey about sort of guest interaction that we're going to run. Sorry, Karen, fire away.
So we can send out SMS, email, or social media, so Facebook messaging, for instance. So it's not just one, and like I said earlier, we can broadcast, so no matter how they initially, so perhaps when they were before they arrived, they were mainly communicating with you via email because maybe they were at work or more on the computer. When they're traveling, they might want to switch to the SMS based communication because their phone's in their hand. So either way, it all goes into one inbox, so it doesn't matter how it's sent and received, the hotel will see it as one conversation. So, and can just respond sort of appropriately, so you can switch between them.
Perfect. Thanks, Karen.
Very good. Okay, great. Thanks again so much for coming into the webinar today, Karen. Much appreciated. And I know James has posted more details of GuestTalk up in the chat for anyone that's interested in finding out more. Good stuff. Right, so our next guest today is Mark Scott, owner of LM House. Mark, are you there?
I am. Thank you for having me.
Hello, Mark. Thank you for joining us. It's good to see you. I know you've joined the webinars on the other side of the camera, so to speak, the last few weeks. So it's great to have you on and tell us a little bit about LM House. So maybe we can kick off with that. Your business there. How did you come by it? How long have you had it? How many rooms does it have?
Okay. Well, we're based in Bowness on Windermere. We took over just nearly 3.5 years ago. I'd been working in Africa. And we were looking for something to do. When we came back, we didn't have a house. My wife likes cleaning, I like cooking, and all of a sudden the boxes started ticking themselves, and so we started looking around for a guest house, and so we took over in 31st of July 2017. We've got 9 bedrooms, 6 in the main house and 3 in a coach house. It was a bit of a baptism of fire because I'm an accountant and had no idea about running a guest house. So when we came, we had one leftover guest from the day that we arrived for the next morning.
Right.
The previous one was still there. And then we were flat out. We were full basically for about 3 months. So it was very much
jump straight in.
Yeah.
That's great. That's great. And it sounds like you've got a winning combination there, though, in terms of the skill sets between the pair of you. In terms of
very unusual to have somebody who actually likes cleaning.
I was going to say, yeah. That's great. And of course, been very important through the course of this year, especially. So through sort of 2020, obviously lockdowns and so forth have been very challenging times, but I know you made some sort of changes to things and processes during the initial lockdown that sort of led you to have a good summer in the end, with regards to people coming to stay when we were allowed to. Maybe you can just sort of talk us a little bit through that.
Yeah, I think probably the two main things that we knew we had to address, along with everybody really, was the question of cleaning and social distancing and communication.
Yeah.
On the cleaning front, we decided, having done a lot of research and spent a lot of time looking at alternatives, we decided to introduce ozone technology. So all the rooms are sanitised. The reason for that really was because, to my mind, everything's a touch point. So it's all well trying to clean touch points, but any piece of the wall could be a touch point in essence. So the benefit of the ozone is that it cleans everywhere. It doesn't have any liquids, so it's suitable for soft furnishings, curtains, which was one issue that I was really struggling to see how you could deal with that without having wet chairs and cushions left. Yeah. So we found that really good. And I also thought it was probably a good marketing tool to be able to say to people that we're using this. It's hospital technology.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that certainly seems to have been the case. And then the other thing, of course, was communications. How do you deal with guests on a socially distanced basis? As has already been said today, you know, it's not in our nature to distance ourselves from our guests quite well. So we need to find a way to communicate with guests, both particularly in-house, with a minimal amount of physical contact, and how to get rid of paper documents. We were using the eviivo registration form, doing that when people arrived. So it was pre-populated, as people will know, but they still had to sign it and fill in the odd details that were missing and so forth. And that was clearly too much close contact. And the other thing was that we knew we'd have to close the dining room because we have a fairly small dining room. We can get everybody in there, but it's pretty cozy when we do. So we knew that we'd have to dispense with the dining room and move over to room service.
Okay.
We've always used a pre-ordering service, so we needed to find some way of, which was on paper, so we needed also some way of dealing with that issue and find a way for people to be able to order their breakfast the night before without being handled.
Good stuff. And how did you find the guests' sort of receptiveness to that? Were they sort of mindful of the situation? Were they happy to do it? Was there any problems in terms of them filling out the forms for the breakfast and so on?
No, I think, we decided to go with GuestTalk, who you've just heard from. Initially, there wasn't a facility for a breakfast ordering form, but having discussed the problem with them, within about 2 weeks, they came up with a solution for us. And guests actually really appreciate. There were a lot of nervous guests.
Yeah, I can imagine.
So we all had them who were very nervous about coming away and potentially exposing themselves to COVID. And 99% of them really liked it. There was the odd one who thought it was over the top, who didn't seem to really get social distancing. But I was saying, 99% were really comfortable with it and actually really appreciated it.
Yeah, and that's good. And I'm sure there's always one, isn't there, with any of these things, but that all those people who appreciated it and respected it.
Yeah.
I think, I don't know what your thoughts are, but do you think guests are potentially going to be looking for something of that nature to be an option going forward, certainly in the short term, but possibly long term too?
It's difficult to know. Obviously, we'd all like to get back to the good old days.
Yeah.
But there will still be an element. There's going to be a prolonged period, I suspect, where people will still be a bit nervous, and they'll want to distance themselves. I mean, from our perspective, I would certainly I would continue on with the registration. It's just easier. And it's also more efficient doing the breakfast ordering that way. People seem to be more inclined to do it by the time that we ask them to do it when it's electronic than where they have to fill out a piece of paper and leave it in the hallway and so forth. So it's actually more efficient. And then because a lot of it's automated using GuestTalk, it's very efficient for us to do it that way, and it's also much easier to chase people up if they haven't got this form in time. You just whiz them a message. But we've had some great feedback, and I think okay, that's in the light of a COVID regime. Quite what happens after that, I don't know. So far as guests, but at least I think it'll be a bit of a mixture of both. I think I'm still trying to decide how we take this forward. But I think the regular messaging, as Karen said, it does go down well. And I think it's not just COVID. It's another form of communication. As she said, it's what people are doing these days. We're all social mediaites, and we're all using text and email, and I think it is becoming the norm. The fact that they can just whiz off a text and say, "Can I have some fresh towels? Or can I have a top up for my tray?" Then I think they do like it, and I think we will probably continue with it. And they'll probably.
That's good, and I guess it helps you address any issues that there might be, or questions that the guest has at that time as well. So it's not going to run through into something that's mentioned on the review. You can get it sorted there and then, because you know about it. It's easy to find out about it, and job's done before anything sort of escalates potentially.
Yeah, absolutely. And I mean, we're pretty proactive when we get a message. If they want towels, they get their towels pretty quickly. Whereas, I think in the not using that system, it might have taken a bit longer. I mean, we've moved away from daily cleaning anyway of rooms for their protection and for our protection, as a lot of people have. But the fact that they can just ask for what they want, they seem quite happy with that. Instead of it just being automatically topped up, they're quite happy to ask for what they need. And I think actually they use less that way. They tend not to want fresh towels, whereas we might have changed their towels if they were wet. They make the decision now, and so there's probably some savings there.
Great, and obviously environmentally friendly as well from that perspective. I guess it's sort of managing better.
Yeah, apart from the plastic that you have to wrap them in.
That's true. Yeah, very good.
One counteracts the other, probably.
And then another point, just wanted to make about your website. Just having a look at your website before sort of coming on today, I can see you've got like the COVID confident AA symbol on there, and you've got a page detailing, what you're doing to be safe and secure, and all that kind of stuff is going to be important, as you said, certainly in the short term when we're open again. So is that a page you sort of added and sort of try and update just to keep people in the picture?
Yeah, we do. I mean, it was primarily done initially, obviously, and I think, we, as you said earlier, we had a really good summer once we opened up for about a week. But I think that's partly because of where we are. We're in a nice rural area, beautiful part of the country. People want to get away, feel safer in the wide open spaces and so forth. But I think it was also there was an element of the fact that they could see exactly what we'd done. And in a moment, if you wish, I just read out a couple of reviews that I've pulled out just to demonstrate how comfortable what we were doing made people feel.
No, that would be a great way to sort of close things, Mark. But before you read those, just thank you so much for coming on today. Really appreciate your time and sharing those thoughts with us, and just bookings for this summer. I'm assuming you've got your diaries open, and are some bookings starting to come in?
We're getting a fairly steady flow. I mean, I do appreciate that some of them will probably not materialise because we may not be open. I mean, we've still got bookings for Valentine's weekend, but clearly that isn't going to happen. But we're getting a steady flow right through the year. In fact, even into next year, we've had some bookings. I suspect it's a wedding party. It's quite a big wedding area, so guests looking for somewhere, and they tend to do it a long way ahead. But there's a steady flow coming in. So it's quite nice. You sort of forget what it's like to have money coming in. Hopefully one day we'll see the benefits of those bookings actually materialising and turning into cash.
Yeah, no, definitely. Fingers crossed on that. And as David says, let's hope it is sort of the springtime, April, hopefully, when we can all start to welcome guests back again.
Yeah.
That's great, Mark. Thanks again so much for coming on. So, yeah, maybe if we can just sort of listen to a couple of those reviews before we let you go, that would be great.
Yeah, I mean, what I didn't mention was that we also, and I don't think Karen did, but we set up a survey. It's part and parcel of the GuestTalk system, but you can adapt it to. And we did it particularly because we wanted to find out how our COVID protocols were being received and whether we're doing things right or wrong. And that, like you said, we get feedback on before you get a bad review. But I mean, just a few quick responses. Communication was second to none using electronic messages. The communication through text messages and emails and the pre-ordering of breakfast was a clever and simple idea, and it works very well. And this is probably my favorite. The owner is trying a new online system, which is genius, considering what's going on with COVID. It avoids contact with hosts and guests. They made us feel very comfy staying here.
Fantastic. No, you can't ask for fairer than that, can you? And yeah, getting those reviews through, so important, and online reputation so important. We're going to touch on that in a second with Francisco. So no, that's been brilliant. Thanks again, Mark, for coming on. Really appreciate your feedback.
Thanks.
Good stuff. Okay, right. So just checking time. We probably should move straight on to our final guest for today. So that's Francisco. Francisco, are you there?
Hi, Paul. Yes, sure am.
Francisco, welcome. So maybe you can tell us initially a little bit about TrustYou and what you guys do. And then I know you've got a presentation for us to take us through, and we can answer some questions at the end.
Exactly. Well, first of all, thank you very much for the invitation. I've prepared a presentation. I'm going to try to make it to the point, to the most important points. So let's go for it. And later on, we will have some questions. Well, first of all, TrustYou. What do we do? Well, basically, we're an online reputation management which helps you to manage your online reviews. Thanks, Mark, for the highlighting. It's important, the survey or having your own reviews, to first show confidence to your guests, and also at the end to improve your services and knowing that you're doing a great job. And that's why, that's where TrustYou can also help you. This is the agenda. Let's just show a few slides about interesting data, how reviews have been during this crazy 2020. Here we have some top cities of Europe. We can see London started at the top, but we can see during the first wave, or when everything with the outbreaks, the lockdowns and so on, the reviews were almost nothing. Later on during the summer, it was kind of a good time, well, compared to the previous time, but still it's not, or it wasn't as good as we expected, or as good as the pre-corona situation. Let's hope, as we all hear, that this 2021 we come back to normal situation. Precisely for the UK, we can see, well, London, of course, is on top of the cities regarding number of reviews compared to the rest. Second, Edinburgh, Manchester, and we can see this decrease on the number of reviews during the lockdown. Still were a few, and then during the summer they came back a bit. So online reputation, why is it so important? Well, first of all, opinions are read by potential guests, and it has been mentioned already. Cleanliness and safety will be now the most important words to track and to check, as guests will be a bit concerned about this. The rating also affects the price. Of course, if you have a 10 score, you will be able to maybe ask for more price and therefore more profits. Having a lot of reviews will help you also not only to show it or be proud of them, but also to make better decisions. At the end, they tell you, oh, I consider the bed, the mattress were hard, or anything, any feedback was always welcome to improve your service. In addition, also more opinions is more visibility and more bookings comparing, for example, two hotels which is quite similar, one hotel with 2,000 reviews compared to 100 reviews. Of course, people will tend to go to the 2,000 reviews because it's always seeing more reviews, more guests will always tend to attract more people. And as Mark mentioned, own feedback is also or will allow you to increase direct bookings and also to show how you're doing, right? For example, taking care of hygiene measures or anything, you will be able to show this on your website, and people coming to your website will have or will be likely to place the booking. This is just some data to support those stats. We know that 95% of the people tend to read some reviews before making the review. Around 76% of the travelers are willing to pay more for higher rates in a hotel. And also it's, of course, there are a bunch amount of hotels out there and people tend to filter by the rate. So if you're on the top, you will not be filtered out. But precisely for this situation, of course, coronavirus affected our daily lives, and how an online reputation can help you through. Well, to track keywords. I think also Karen mentioned COVID, pandemic hygiene will be now concerns from the potential guests, and answering via a messaging or posting or having these words from your previous guests will help to know how you're doing and whether your potential guests will come to your hotel. This is not only to know these words, but also what they're saying, what do really mean. Are they positive? Are they negative? Cleanliness and safety will be key words for the upcoming months, and always paying attention to that will be relevant. In addition, the online reputation also helps you to track your competitors. It's not only what you're doing, but also compared to your competitors. Are they having already reviews? Are they talking good about their hygiene measures? This way will help you or the hotels also to compete better with them, and of course to track the rating of every OTA. Most of the bookings come from the OTAs, and it's important to track how people are rating you in those OTAs. Here we've seen during this 2020 a few changes. For example, COVID was never mentioned before March. However, as of today, 1 every 10 reviews is mentioned the COVID, which is compared to before, of course, a big change. Cleanliness or clean is also count or mentioned every 4 reviews. So we recommend to track those words and to at the end, potential guests are crazy about traveling. They will travel soon, but they will be concerned about these topics.
Yeah.
Important, how to get more reviews, of course. Well, first you have to train your staff that this will help the hotel and everyone, so they have to be motivated. We recommend as a best practice during the checkout to ask proactively to leave a review. When they are prompt with this question, they tend to leave the review. And also ask in real time. If you detect or you ask the people during the on-site whether is everything going good or not, you are likely to get the feedback and at the end to solve whether there is a problem or not. Karen mentioned this already, keeping communications contactless, having either a messaging tool to communicate contactless during the on-site, or also providing the option that the guest can provide a feedback will be, or it is very important as of today in order to solve those issues, concerns about the hygiene, or any question that may come up during the on-site. At the end, this will help you out for the post-stay to have a better review. Of course, it's not only good to get reviews, also we recommend to respond to them, especially those which are negative. As a best practices, we recommend to always say thank you. Of course, the guest took the time to leave a review. When there is, in the case of positive critique, always say that you will, of course, take care of it, address it, and take it into account. And always invite the guest to come back. Usually, this is a good way to create loyal customers. On the other hand, when it's about negative reviews, of course, there's usually bad comments. We always recommend to apology first and being sincere and honest. If there was a problem, it happened. We cannot control 100% of the things under this hotel, right? So you have to address and ensure that, of course, it's either solved or it will be solved, or provide a solution so the guest, the potential guest who might be or might read that review, knows that the hotel cares about the guests and makes solutions, right? And always end with a positive note or a positive review or a positive invitation to come back for the guest. Well, how to market your reviews? As Mark mentioned already, you have to be proud of the good reviews. It's a good sign. And the best thing is to post them on your website in order to attract those or better direct bookings. You can also use the social network to show that your guests are happy with your measures, your guests are happy with your service, and therefore this increases the brand awareness, as well as can or might increase the direct bookings. You can also, as Mark has implemented, own reviews. These own reviews can be also posted on your website in order to attract those direct bookings. And from time to time, just a positive note, we also recommend to showcase what happens behind the scenes. At the end, of course, we are people, we are workers, and we, from time to time, have stories to show that increases our brand awareness. Just a few last points to help you to deal with the current situation. Mark already implemented on his website in Elim Hostel. It's a good practice. We recommend totally it's have kind of a badge or a certification which proves that you're concerned about the safety of your guests and that you have implemented different measures to, at the end, to make the place safe. We also offer this to our customers, and this will eventually increase the direct bookings, or that your guests feel safer at your place. This is also another thing we recommend, and we're highlighting quite at TrustYou. Later on, of course, will be a period in which it will not be yet normal. However, people still will be very careful and concerned about the cleanliness and safety measures. Everything you can show on your website about what you're doing to protect the guests is well received from your guests and will be very appreciated from them. And that's it pretty much of a nutshell. I don't know if there are any questions. I hope this is helpful.
Thank you, Francisco. No, that's great. We've got another survey actually that James, I think, has just thrown up about reviews, just to sort of get a bit of a feeling about what people are doing with them currently out there. But yeah, James, have we had any questions come through for Francisco as well?
We have, but actually, as we've I've been jotting them down, Francesco, you've answered them all actually. So thank you very much. I don't know if you saw them coming up as they were going through, but
I did. I mean, all I was perhaps going to add is that you know, the importance of the touch points of trying to get those reviews, I guess, with the communications is key, and how those, I guess, GuestTalk can sort of help with that as well, or that messaging piece, as to sort of give people a couple of nudges to ask to try and give you those reviews. I think that's important, isn't it? Give them as much opportunity to do so as possible.
Exactly. For example, I think I showed this was a QR code. Now people are actually quite happy with it. Everyone is using it. Maybe people might leave a feedback, might not, might send a message via a messaging feature, but at least providing the option for the guests to communicate and to say what's going on. Yeah.
Yeah. And what I thought was really interesting that I noticed down as we were going through the amount of reviews that are now, of course, mentioning COVID and cleaning and the importance of those, and people want to be reading about those. So if they're coming through in your reviews and it's highlighting those particular elements as being strong at the hotel, that's hopefully going to be a positive to get you more bookings as a hotel in the future, or B&B guest house in the future.
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, of course, everyone will be concerned about these measures, healthy and so on. And once there is a bad comment about cleanliness, can kill your reputation. That's why tracking those or implementing healthy measures will be key to come back to normal, actually.
Fantastic. No, that's great, Francisco. Thank you so much for joining us today. Really highlights the importance of reviews, more important now than ever. You know, that online reputation. Interesting as well, some of the stats about the number of people that look at reviews, use them to kind of, you know, funnel out which properties they want to actually stay at. I thought a really interesting point was that, you know, 33% of people won't even look at anything that's got 4 or less. You know, so that's another massive thing behind getting strong reviews. I know eviivo as a company taking it aside out of the sort of accommodation sector, but as us as a company, we're always trying to sort of try and get strong reviews on Google My Business and Trustpilot, things like that, because they are so important now when people are doing their research. It's really key to have them strong. So no, thank you again for coming on and sharing your expertise with us, Francisco. It's been great.
Pleasure. Thank you.
Good stuff. Okay, so before we go then today, just should highlight a couple of things. First of all, thanks to everybody for joining us today on the call. Really appreciate you taking the time, and hopefully you've had some useful hints and tips going forwards on this share webinar. We're going to be doing the share webinars bi-weekly now going forward. So I think the next one's due to come on 10th, is that? Anyway, we'll be sending around details in the normal methods shortly for that one. So please do tune in again in future. At the end of this webinar, there'll be a survey that pops up, and on there it's asking things like, you know, what else you'd like to see in webinars going forward, what you'd find useful. We had some good comments on that last week, so please pop any feedback that you have in there, because it's always great for us to then be able to shape and mold these webinars to be as effective and as useful as possible going forwards. Also, of course, need to thank all the guests today again. So David, Karen, Mark, Francisco, thanks for all coming on. James, thanks for helping host today again. And yeah, I think that's it from us today. Just looking at the time, we're actually slightly ahead of schedule. Normally I'm in trouble for running over. So today we've managed to come in on time. So thanks all again for coming on. I'll just give one more nod to the masterclass, the pricing masterclass that is happening for eviivo customers. There'll be an email coming out about that later today. You might want to jump on that, might give some hints and tips about how to set rates if indeed this quarantine comes in and gives us further opportunities going forward. But we'll leave it there, and please do fill in the survey when it comes up a little bit later on. Thanks again, and see you in a couple of weeks' time.